So this is part B. This is part B of the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. And these are the papers. So we paid, our movement paid more than £30 today for these papers and the contextual background notes. And these ones about what, £15. These Guardian and others. And count back decades, over decades, the equivalent expenditure that we have been kind of making, and we have not been asking anyone at any stage for public donation or anything like that. And we have not made any application for public funding. And we are doing a public service. So count about at the rate of, equivalent rate of about £20. So this has been going on for a very long time. And £20 multiplied by 365 just on the cover, not to talk about the main background, research, resources, time, investigative work that is entailed and involved in producing this kind of analysis, which we are doing for the sake of providing access to our insights and observations and our findings to aid the cause of the telling of the truth and the holding to the account, or the holding to the account, and making accountable all the makers of the decisions that affect other people's lives and livelihoods and rights. So as he said, the private lie, which is available officially tomorrow, that is dated tomorrow, the Friday, the 19th of March 2021. And this is a lame, very lame and very lazy and very kind of timid kind of cover. Given that these women were attacked at the vigil in an unprecedented, violent, unwarranted way, you would think that this is not the kind of front cover photograph that they would run. They would run the picture of one of those victims. Or better still, they would actually run the picture of the woman Sarah Everard. And they would leave that blank if they couldn't find any courageous caption to put near her photograph. I mean, the courageous caption would be, a metropolitan policeman has been charged with her abduction and murder. That should have been the kind of truthful, courageous caption. No need to have any satire, which is stupid anyway. The private eye satire is stupid most of the times because it is cowardly and it is corrupt and it is opportunistic and it's careerist. Jan Pissoff and his absolutely congealed racist deputy, Francis Swine, these are committing crimes against journalism, if you like, because they have this section in Private Lie, which is called Street of Shame. Their word for Fleet Street. And this has been going on for as long as the private lie has been in publication. And this street of shame is supposed to be an examination of Fleet Street in a critical way. It's not. It's a kind of poxy, creepy, cringe-making, embarrassingly empty, shallow way. And this is the page this time, or well, page and the third of a page. And it's not investigative. And it's not something that really investigated the phone hacking scandals, mainly located at the Rupert Murdoch-owned news of what the private lie calls news of screws, news of the screws. That was the news of the world. Because if the private lie had been doing the right job, right amount and right quality of the investigative and ethical and moral querying and examining of the evidence of the corruption and the racism and the stupidity and the lies and brainwashing that Fleet Street actually does commit and perpetrates and perpetuates, then there would have been no need for a Levison inquiry, or there would have been no need for a call for an inquiry, let's say. Levison was a mainly decorative diversion, but there was justifiably the call for an inquiry on a deeper investigation into Fleet Street. And of course, this is the 10th anniversary of the Levison inquiry, which we shall be looking at, and which has been kind of marked by the weekly New European on the front page today. And I don't think that the New European, although it is kind of skeptical about Fleet Street generally, and it's kind of still pro-European kind of stance, like Private Lie's Street of Shame, it has the veneer, the appearance, the facade of being critical, but actually the substance is not there. We shall be looking at that as well. And the substance is not there because most of the people that actually write Fleet Street, the New European columns, etc., with a few exceptions, are still currently pals with their friends in Fleet Street, and also some of the sources for the New European are still active kind of journalists in Fleet Street papers or on Fleet Street papers, in Fleet Street, on Fleet Street papers. So we're covering both grammatical formations. And this is true of the likes of Alistair Campbell, who was the propaganda man for Tony Blair. Now, Campbell was a Daily Mirror journalist before he got involved in the 1990s with Peter Mandelson and became one of the founding pairs, if you like, of the rapid rebuttal program that the Labour Party created under Tony Blair's leadership in the years run up to the 1997 election. And the purpose of the rapid rebuttal action or unit was for the Labour Party in opposition at the time and during the dying days of John Major as Prime Minister. The rapid rebuttal was to deliver immediate, instantaneous rebuttals to Conservative Party and Conservative government issued statements and propaganda. That was for the first time something that was really effective in terms of issuing rebuttals to the Tories' propaganda. And it served to transform the stance of the Labour Party in opposition into an effective machine that was waiting for government. And that did succeed in many ways in rebutting the Tories in a way that the Tories couldn't counter. That significantly contributed to the enhancement of the image of that particular leadership by Tony Blair to the gullibles, 52% and whatever, in a way that enabled the party to get the election in May 1997. So making that point a practical point as a contrast to the behavior of the really overhyped Jeremy Corbyn, who really lacked the intellectual abilities. He still does. And what I say about Jeremy Corbyn is nothing to do with his various kind of demonized forms of his image. That is nothing to do with it. It is simply that practically, as I said about the Peter Mandelson and Alistair Campbell duo in the 1990s, let's say during 95 to the election of 97, the rapid rebuttal was the kind of thing that I'm not modeling that on rapid rebuttal by those two, but I'm saying that that kind of thing, I had been doing that kind of thing for a very long time, but my work was not relevant to the government because I was not part of the team of any government or preparing to be government team. But this concept was very much practiced by me for a very long time, long before anyone even ever heard of Tony Blair. Now, when I said that Jeremy Corbyn, despite the content and the implication of the allegations of his kind of various roles against the Jewish people, he allowed that to become the dominant allegation against him. And here is what I've been explaining over the last few months in this channel. But before this started, I have been posting on various blogs and platforms the same thing or same analysis. When Corbyn would leave his house in Islington, more often than not, he would have journalists or so-called journalists waiting outside his house. And more often than not, they had the recording devices, audio and video and whatever. And more often than not, Corbyn would sprint away, run away. Instead of saying good morning or good afternoon or whatever, or good evening, whatever the time was that he was coming out of his house, Corbyn would sprint as fast as he could and reach the nearest waiting Labour Party vehicle. And away and off he was. He disappeared, he vanished. And I'm saying that no matter what the topic of the day was about the Labour Party or about the British politics, or about the world, or about the climate, or whatever, Corbyn could have turned the tables on the anti-Corbyn media, either from Britain or from across the white world, let's say, America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, whatever. And he could have spent 10 minutes, or in fact, he could have demanded 10 minutes worth of time, during which he could deliver a whole lot of rebuttals and denunciations of the media on the record, If he did that for a week or 2 weeks, they would stop. They would have changed the tack and they would have changed the technique and he would have beaten them. But Corbyn showed no sign of even understanding what he could do, let alone demonstrating what he could do. This is March. And when I filmed him in Shadwell in, I think, 2018, either 2018 or 2017, whatever the actual kind of year it was, in Shadwell, shortly before the election, I think it was 2018. And Corbyn was, I filmed him for, I have him on the video published on YouTube for maybe a minute or just under a minute or thereabouts. And Corbyn issued or gave a speech that was completely tragic because he was talking about the DWP, the poverty created by the DWP, Ian Duncan Smith, the Dracula Duncan Smith that I call him, and the DWP's withholding, sanctioning the most vulnerable, a few thousands of whom had been forced to commit suicide because of that. Now that is something that remains 3 calendar years on. This remains the most significant scandal of contemporary times in Britain that is absolutely crying out to be taken seriously and made use of politically, and to destroy all credibility of the crooks and criminals in power now. How could even one person be intentionally pushed into such a position where they feel that they have no alternative but to commit suicide? And these people went ahead. Why am I saying that? Because of Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has ridiculed Meghan Markle. Not only has he ridiculed Meghan Markle once, he has been ridiculing Meghan Markle and calling her a liar for the last 2 weeks or so. And the main thing he is calling her a liar about is the fact that she said that she was bullied and she was isolated and she was assaulted by racist smear and innuendo in the royal family, to the point where she felt she could not go on living anymore. Now that is more or less the feeling, according to all the studies and all the reports from the various people who have had direct access and information about the people who end up doing that most tragic of things. That people do that because they feel that they have been abandoned, that they feel that they have no kind of word of sympathy from anyone about their own life. And Meghan said several times that nobody asked how she was. This was not on the Oprah Winfrey interview. It was before. She did say that nobody wanted to know how she felt. And everyone who is concerned about people's welfare in that way, in that context, like people wanting to end their life, that is the most important critical state that the person is in or reaches that stage. And that's the most sensitive state. And nobody must ever assume that they know better than the person experiencing that feeling. And here was ITV and other mainstream media and Fleet Street repeating the disdainful, racist remark against Meghan Markle by Piers Morgan. So when you talk about Shamima Begum, you look at the banner just under me. I'm talking about, of course, I've talked about Sarah Everard and I've talked about the police, and I'm now talking about Shamima Begum and Meghan Markle, these two. These two, coincidentally, I mean, neither could plan this to be the coincidence, but at the same time, they are being in the news because they have been attacked by racists, one way or the other. Racist royal family, racist judiciary, racist home secretary, and all that. Racists home secretary, let's say. RACISTS apostrophe S. Racists who are pleased by the behavior of two incumbents, one Pakistani origin and one Indian origin. Sajid Javid, who took away Shamima Begum's citizenship, and Priti Patel, who is backing Sajid Javid's racist kind of agenda, compliant, agenda forced removal of Shamima Begum's citizenship. And we are going back to Tower Hamlets and the lack of care that I have ascribed to Piers Morgan. Tower Hamlets Council had a clear duty to safeguard these children, these girls, Shamima Begum and her two friends. And it didn't. So we shall come back and talk more about Shamima Begum. Now the Guardian has got three pieces actually on the front page. And all of them about the lack of care. Look at this. The main headline on the top is, of course, about the various incompetence and lack of supply, etc., shortages of the COVID vaccine, which has been overhyped. And this one is the relations and relatives and bereaved loved ones of the people who were killed, and their lawyers have issued the legal warning, a legal kind of notice or threat that they would take the government to court over the deaths. And the other one is the abuse in football. So these are all about lack of care. And lack of care in all these contexts correctly warrants to be taken very seriously, most seriously. And here is or has been Piers Morgan, who has been boasting and bragging of being contemptibly in denial of any duty of care that he owed and owes to Meghan Markle. How can that be possible? And the incredible thing about the Piers Morgan is that Private Lie, which has given the name, not that I needed Private Eye to call him Piers Morgan, I would have called him Piers Morgan because of my linguistic record and dexterity. I always do that. But it is a coincidence. But whatever it is, they have not done, Private Lie have not done a piece about Piers Morgan. And this is actually, I'm just looking again, just in case they have done anything on the, they have not done anything in depth about Piers Morgan's racist dismissal of Meghan Markle. And the private eye, failure is not unique, but we'll come to the bereaved families' legal challenge against Boris Johnson government. It is absolutely obvious that Johnson is unfit to the point that the numbers of people that have been allowed to be killed under the pretext of the COVID-19 and the pandemic has long exceeded the number of people killed during the whole of the so-called Second World War. The British people, that is. Now, there is a piece in the Guardian headline that the BBC journalists face push to move their jobs out of London. Given that the BBC has failed to report correctly what happened in the police attack on the mourners for Sarah Everard, I mean, what is the difference between them staying in London and being pushed out of London? And the ironic thing is that the criminal Cummings was allowed yesterday by MPs to tell MPs that they need to take a hard look at the response, the inadequacy and the wrongness of the response to the COVID-19. And he is the one that actually messed up a lot of it. And he defied and showed two fingers and staged a news conference as a de facto prime minister to justify his breaking the law. And what I'm saying in the diagnosis of The Guardian is that these morons have failed to point out the fact that none of the MPs that Cummings was insulting had the courage, if you like, to tell him off and tell him to go get lost. And John Crace, the sketch writer, has got a kind of sort of rebuttal of Dominic Cummings' appearance before the MPs in the so-called Science Committee. And he says that Cummings gave the lectures to the MPs but forgot about his role in breaking the rules on the virus. And they were stupid, the MPs of the Science Committee. They didn't actually challenge him. If they challenged him, it is not in the news. So it was completely unmentionable or insignificant, or another piece of cowardly concession and complicity and caving in by the members of the Science Select Committee to this habitual, serial lawbreaker, Dominic Cummings. Now, there is an item here that says in The Guardian, page 19, bottom of page 19. That's where it says that Pierce morons attack on Meghan Markle drew record number of complaints against him. At least that is a kind of piece of record. It's byline to Kevin Rollinson. 2 episodes of Good Morning Britain, in which Piers Morgan's comments about the Duchess of Sussex interview with Oprah Winfrey led to him quitting the show, have attracted the most complaints to the regulator in its history, that is, in the history of Ofcom. That is absolutely about right. I mean, that should be the number of complaints. And Ofcom said episodes of the ITV program, Good Morning Britain, that aired on 8th and 9th of March, had just sparked 57,121 complaints, surpassing the previous record of 44,500 set in respect of Shilpa Shetty's 2007 appearance on Celebrity Big Brother. So it shows that no matter where they come from, any black person or Asian person or African person or person of mixed heritage like Meghan Markle or Shilpa Shetty, who is of Asian Indian origin. I mean, the gullibles and the racists at the ITV or mainstream television in this country are so brazen in the racism that they attract highest or very high numbers of complaints. Shilpa Shetty was really bullied racistly on the television program. And correctly, she had so many people complaining on her behalf. After hearing Meghan discuss her personal experience of mental health, remember what I said about the mental health and lack of care issue and suicidal thoughts, as well as royal officials' knowledge of them, Morgan said, "I'm sorry, I don't believe a word she says. I wouldn't believe her if she read me a weather report." Now he has confidence. It's not just Morgan being racist, but he breathes in an atmosphere, environment in the mainstream television and in the accompaniment of Fleet Street supporting that no matter how racist he is, no matter how objectively defined cruel he is, he will be supported by his mates and Fleet Street and by the rest of the mainstream. And one of the most brazen racist liars to be given platforms by the BBC for so long, Andrew Neil, rushed out a propaganda spin for his own about to be started channel. He got it in the news about his channel, and he absolutely used it to exploit the whole occasion to promote his own racist preference. And he said that it was a big mistake by ITV to let Moron go, because Neil said that Piers Morgan would be a big asset. Now, in the context of this society and the world and everything, what is an asset? If a racist is an asset, then God help us. This Neil has been presenting and controlling several flagship programs on the BBC. License fee payers BBC, public broadcaster, let's say, for Britain. And he is saying that a racist of Piers Morgan's contemptible sickness is a big asset, not just an asset, a big asset. Anyway, so The Guardian says moron later said he was dismissing Meghan's suggestion she had been discouraged from seeking help with her mental health issues rather than the suggestion she had been suffering them. How could he say that? He said that he wouldn't even believe if she read a weather report. He wasn't making any vague suggestion. There was emphatic rejection of Meghan Markle. And the charity that actually is one of the main charities known for mental health issues said, it's vital that when people reach out for support or share their experience of ill mental health, they are treated with dignity, respect, and empathy. There was none of dignity, respect, or empathy in anything Piers Morgan said against Meghan Markle. And The Guardian continues, saying that Morgan's final episode on the ITV show saw him storm off set after a heated exchange with his co-star Alex Beresford, in which Beresford accused Morgan of trashing Meghan, which is factually absolutely correct, that Morgan was trashing Meghan. It later emerged that Meghan also made a formal complaint to Ofcom, raising concerns about the effect of Morgan's comment may have on the issue of mental health generally, and those attempting to deal with their own problems, not about the former newspaper editor's personal attack on her. ITV announced that Morgan had decided to leave the show on the evening of 9th of March, shortly after Ofcom said that it had launched an investigation under its harm and offence rules. So this is somebody who was an editor of the Daily Mirror. I mean, one of the comparatively more widely circulated Fleet Street newspapers. And Morgan was sacked, instantly sacked by the Mirror's executive when it was discovered that he had faked some content of the Daily Mirror, whatever the subject was, that he faked it. And then he crawled up. He went to America, crawled up everywhere, and got himself spots here, there, and everywhere. And he's back. So what the lesson of the Morgan sacking for lying? That it doesn't matter. I mean, Fleet Street editors can lie and they get away with it. And we shall come to the lies by Fleet Street editors in the context of the Levison inquiry that was set up in 2011, later. So here is a picture of Dominic Cummings in front of the Science Committee yesterday. And it said that Cummings takes a swig. And what this says, Cummings, Boris Johnson's ex-chief advisor, took a swipe at the health department yesterday has revealed the terms of a deal struck between him and Boris Johnson during a Science and Technology Committee meeting yesterday. In his first public appearance since being fired last November, Cummings said he took on the job of right-hand man only after Boris Johnson agreed to double the science budget and pledged not to allow a second Brexit referendum. The comments, which included Cummings telling MPs that the Department of Health was a smoking ruin in terms of procurement reveal the extent of influence Cummings had exerted over Johnson. That's a very correct comment in there. And there is a piece that is trailed on the front page, but it is detailed on page 4 of the Financial Times about the Irish Republic asking Joe Biden to help in the kind of crisis that is looming about the European Union and the UK. Because the Irish Republic knows that the UK will ditch the agreement between the EU and Britain over the Irish kind of parts, the part of the island that actually depends on the Good Friday Agreement. And it seems that the Chinese are doing business with many Muslim countries, Muslim clients. So, and Iran is the latest one. Pakistan, of course, is a regular one, but Iran is the latest one. And Iran is buying Chinese. What is Iran buying from China? Washington has told Beijing that it will enforce Trump-era sanctions against Iranian oil as shipments from the Islamic regime to China. So it's not the Chinese selling anything. It's the Chinese buying Iranian oil. Now that's interesting because Iran remains the main flag carrier as the extremist Islamist state in the world, according to the USA and its allies. If that is the case, then it would follow that China and Iran would discuss the issue of the Uyghur Muslims who have been being persecuted and massacred by China for a very long time. The fact that the Uyghurs don't feature in the Chinese kind of discussions with Iran shows that Iran is not really bothered about the Uyghurs. Very telling situation. And the Financial Times says, in a piece by Robert Shrimsley, that protecting half the country must be the priority. That is to keep women safe. I mean, it's an obvious statement, but the fact that it has to be made at all shows how dire things are under the Johnson-fronted cabal of a government and under the stupid Sadiq cannot do it, or Sadiq cannot do mayor at the expense of London. Sadiq cannot do is supposed to be the head of the police authority, not the police force, because the head of the police force is Cressida Dick. But the Metropolitan Police Authority is the part of the duties of the London or the mayor at the expense of London. And Sadiq Khan happens to be the incumbent. And he Sadiq Khan continues to fail to make an impact of any position that he has taken. He has taken completely lame, timid, and laughably useless stance so far about the safety of the women or safety of women in London. And the Financial Times, Robert Shrimpley, is saying that Johnson must put the safety of women first. I mean, this is so obvious. And yet the fact that it has to be, the obvious point has to be made, shows how unfit for purpose Boris Johnson is and how unfit for purpose Sadiq Khan, incumbent so-called mayor at the expense of London, has been. And Shrimpley is saying that this is a societal malaise. Shrimpley's first paragraph is, of course, less than honest. He says governments are always more comfortable tackling definable problems than a societal malaise. So when the issue is the fear and anxiety of half of society, the instinct can be to retreat into familiar solutions. Now, this is not a societal malaise. This is a society that allows the murder, rapes and murders of women as if they are to be expected. That is what is happening. Women's safety, in the general context of society, women's safety is, how shall I say, should be the first priority, not a priority. I mean, if women are not safe, then society doesn't exist. It is that serious. Anyway, the fact that it has to be argued for women's safety shows how unfit Boris Johnson is. So we shall continue showing the head. The Beaverbrook lying Daily Express continues to propagate against the European Union and shore up Boris Johnson's image. And it is full of these kind of lies, pages after pages. And they've got a piece about Michael Barrymore, about the murder of a man in his house. And they're promoting Dominic Cummings and giving him the credit for blasting the civil service as a disaster zone. That is part of the Beaver Brook's poisonous legacy, the Daily Express, the racist Daily Express. And they're talking more about the BIP sex scandal. And the police apparently wanting to investigate the claims. But there is nothing about Sarah Everard in the Daily Express. The diversion after diversion. And the Daily Boris Graph is running again an anti-European Union front page about the so-called British vaccine. And that there is a piece about do not resuscitate. That many of the care home residents were murdered in effect by being put under DNR labels illegally. So it would be absolutely typical of the British court establishment to find any number of ways to deny the massacres that they have committed. Massacres of the care home people, the elderly, and others. And there is a piece which is completely not in the routine of the Fleet Street papers in the wake of the vigil and the arrests of the women and the assault on the women by the police. The headline is Ministers Tell Police to treat misogyny, that is attack on women, as a hate crime. And campaigners calling for tougher sentences for perpetrators following murder of Sarah Everard. Now, this hate crime notion has been also being circulated by London. The incumbent mayor at the expense of London, Sadiq Khan, is trying to be clever by being part of the narrative that is emerging now of shielding Boris Johnson from criticism for abandoning his duty to protect the vigil participants and to stop the police attacking them. So what Sadiq Khan is doing, imitating or going in tandem with the Boris Johnson fronted cabal by calling on the police to treat anti-women attacks and utterances as hate crime. I mean, anyone watching this needs to be told, and I'm going to tell them, this is another stupid irony, isn't it? Here is a policeman, Wayne Couzens, who abducted and possibly raped and murdered this woman, Sarah Everard, which should lead to calls for the police and the Home Office to publish data about how many police persons actively employed by the police have been the subject of reports of sexual harassment and rape and other attacks on women. And the other thing is that if the police are themselves committing crimes, sexually attacking women, I mean, what's the point of making anything hate crime? Because it is the police who are going to police the hate crime. So the emergency demand must include to make the police accountable in a way that no woman suffers as a result of the police being the offenders. No woman suffers, full stop, because of the police. Because police have now become the biggest organized source of crimes against women. As Jess Phillips said yesterday, hundreds of women are raped every day, and the rapists are not prosecuted, let alone being convicted. And this has not been followed up. This is not anywhere in the papers. I mean, that is a staggering number. And the shadow Home Office minister said that during the day yesterday. And she is not reported, at least so far as I have seen the papers. I have not seen every paper yet. But that is what is staggering about Lee Street. That it's in absolute knowing, intentional denial. We'll continue on that one later. Now, back to updating on the campaign for justice for Shamima Begum. On page 16 of today's Daily Boris Graph, they got a piece called Begum Lived in Fear of Being Killed in Camp. What they're doing here is kind of running their version of a statement that Shamima Begum gave to a documentary maker. And this documentary maker is going to make this documentary available later. Let's read the first kind of paragraph. Islamic State bride Shamima Begum has said she had no choice but to say certain things to journalists that led to her UK citizenship being revoked because she lived in fear that women in the camp would kill her and her baby if she didn't. In an emotive interview in a new documentary, Miss Begum, then aged 19 and still wearing the Islamic niqab, begs to be given a second chance. The film, The Return Life After ISIS, follows her and other young women who travel to Syria to join the terror group's short-lived caliphate, only to end up stateless and stuck living in a refugee camp in Syria. I would say to the people in the UK, give me a second chance, because I was still young when I left, she says, she says in the film, which premiered at the US South by Southwest Film Festival yesterday, that is Wednesday. I just want them to put aside everything they have heard about me in the media. And they continue, the Daily Telegraph published exclusive pictures this week of Miss Begum, now 21, wearing Western clothing and no head covering at the Al-Raj camp near the Iraq-Syria border. in an apparent rejection of previous religious beliefs. She declined to speak to the paper under the legal advice, as she is appealing the decision over her citizenship. Miss Begum was 15 when she left her home in Bethnal Green, East London, to travel to Syria along with two school friends. She married a Dutch jihadi fighter and had 3 children, all of whom have since died. Now, if the writers of these Telegraph, editors, whatever, the Boris Graf priests, had any humanity, they would not have written that sentence that all of our 3 children have died. They should have added some kind of humane kind of expression. How do they know? What do they know about losing? Still aged as a child, and being the mother giving birth to 3 children in a row, and then losing one after the other of these 3 children. How would they know about what she felt as a mother, as a young mother in that situation? So I would say that the trauma is only increasing for Shamima Begum, because the more she realizes the impact on her, the more she will suffer. And that actually raises the question of what the Tower Hamlets Council is doing today. We are discussing this one about Shamima Begum on the Daily Boris Graf today, Thursday, 18th of March 2021, the page 10, now page 16 of the Daily Boris Graf. And this is the only human comment about Shamima after she lost her. After she lost her third child. The Spanish woman who directed this documentary, Alba Sotora, said about Shamima Begum. Shamima was a piece of ice when I met her. Miss Sotora said. She lost the third kid when I was there. It took a while to be able to cry. That is absolutely true. So what we are saying to Tower Hamlets Council, that you, Tower Hamlets Council, did it to Shamima. And now you do your job. Repair your misdeeds and wrongs and negligence, and make amends. So what this woman is saying is the only piece of humanity that anyone has said about Shamima Begum in any part of the media so far. And this is the Boris Graf quoting this Spanish woman who has directed this documentary. That when she met Shamima Begum, she was a piece of ice. She was frozen. After losing her third child in a row. Can anyone imagine a young child herself? I mean, she is 15 or 16 or that age. She has lost one child, second child, the third child. All three children have died. How was this human being feeling? And I'm saying that Tower Hamlets Council, under its duty safeguarding children, should have thought about the consequences and impact on Shamima Begum. And Tower Hamlets Council abandoned Shamima Begum. Tower Hamlets Council abandoned Shamima Begum, neglected Shamima Begum, and failed to help her in any way. So much so that today, I shall check again, but I checked earlier this week, and the website of the Tower Hamlets Council has, when you search the website and look for any reference to Shamima Begum on the website, it says there is zero result. Let's see what it is saying right this minute. So that it's all absolutely directly current now. So I'm reading this first. Search results on Shamima, the name Shamima. Your search for Shamima returned zero results. No, let's go back and so they're saying that your search for Shamima Begum, Shamima returned zero results. Now, when I put the Begum after Shamima, it produces a misleading result. It has 39 results which are about Begum. And there are too many references to a Begum called Councillor Begum. And she is not doing anything of the sort. Councillor Asma Begum. And what the Tower Hamlets councillors are doing, the Tower Hamlets councillors who are kind of observing silence about the campaign to get rid of the mayor system, is that they have been told by John Biggs and by the Labour Party that the mayor system is so good that these councillors are not being required to do any work because Beeks is doing whatever and they're getting the allowances by doing nothing. Now they will lose these if the mayor system is scrapped. That's what they're being told. Now let me tell them this one. Do they realize that Shamima Begum, in the context of Tower Hamlets Council's duties that the council has neglected to carry out to safeguard her, this has been a trial, this has been a pilot. Given that civil liberties and the right to protest and right to express opinions are coming under attack openly by the police bill and all the other things that the racist government is doing. The treatment of Shamima Begum by Tower Hamlets Council is not going to be the only person or only case. Tower Hamlets Council will become like other councils implementing increasing racist policies, an enforcer of racist policies and denial and deprivation. Do these Bangladeshi councillors realize that? Do they think it's a joke? Do they think that some of them who are aligned to political parties in Bangladesh, that alignment will be of any use when it comes to Bangladeshi people? Most of them, the large number of Bangladeshi people in this country, Bangladeshi origin people in this country, are actually British citizens. Now, if a British citizen like Shamima Begum, whose citizenship was acquired automatically by birth, can be denied her citizenship, do these Bangladeshi councillors realize what this racist policy will need to be kind of applied against the other Bangladeshi origin people carrying British citizenship? That policy won't need any extra explanation. And if the elected councillors are not vocal, they will be completely ignored. And this is the time, this is the chance to stop that and stop the sinking of the whole existence of the community and to assert democratic authority to defend themselves and defend the community. And they can make the start by doing two things. One is to support this campaign for justice for Shamima Begum and the other children, and to support the demand, actively support the demand, genuinely, truthfully, honestly support the demand to bring an end to the corrupt and corrupting and racist mayor system, elected mayor system, so that everyone who is a councillor has a voice actually and has the right to have a voice. Under the mayor system, they don't have a right to have a voice. And when it is treated as a kind of party political thing like the whip, they haven't got a voice. But if they are councillors, automatically they have the voice. They cannot be whipped to silence. That would be completely, absolutely impossible. And constitutionally, if they get rid of the mayor system, then constitutionally, every councillor regains the say. 80% of the say has been lost because of the mayor system. And what we are saying to these councillors, that we shall be naming, we shall be broadcasting, identify individual counselors on this program on both issues. And we shall be giving facts about the behavior of these counselors over key issues affecting the existence of the community in the future. And we shall be doing that beginning today, because we have just done the introduction here. And going back to the sun on the coverage, the sun is actually promoting Dominic Cummings and saying that Matt Hancock's health department was a smoking ruin. So he's blaming Matt Hancock and not Dominic Cummings. And they've got a 2-page spread, pages 10 and 11, against the European Union. And there is a rare piece by a woman called Lindsay Clark, and it's headed, "Sexist banter is no joke, lads." And they're presenting Kate Middleton and Wills in a convoluted way as expressing St. Patrick's Day wishes to the Irish people. And Rod, completely ridiculous, Liddell, is adding his voice to the call that Cressida Dick should go. He's being just trendy and he's not being genuinely, honestly for women's safety. And the same version that is doing the rounds in Fleet Street about Shamima Begum, asking for forgiveness and a second chance, is also briefly on the page 17 of the Scum Today. And there is really so they've got the front page about Barrymore facing quiz. So Barrymore facing quiz as man age 50 is arrested on murder. As I said, I mean, this case of the alleged involvement of Michael Barrymore is not going to go away, because there must be enough links and connections for it to be alive, this line of inquiry to be alive for as long as it has been, 20 years. And According to the scum, the Michael Barrymore is said to be relieved by the arrest of this person. Somebody else, not Barrymore. Obviously, he will be relieved by the arrest of this other person, not by him. Not being accused of doing the murder himself. He's saying on pages 4 and 5 that he just wants justice for the Stuart, the victim of the murder. His father is terminally ill and he's saying that he just wants justice for his son before he dies. And they've got a timeline about what happened in Barrymore's home on the day that Stuart was murdered. And the I newspaper has got a piece about it's a special report about ISIS brides, and it says victims of terrorists. Now, we are not talking about ISIS brides at all. What we are talking about is the children being let down by Terrorist Council that owed the duty to safeguard them. And it didn't safeguard them. Now, in the last 48 hours, we have accessed kind of assertions on some platform by Lutfur Rahman. Remember Lutfur Rahman? He was in post when these girls were being neglected by Terrorist Council. Remember that? And Lutfur Rahman is being paraded as being a supporter of the elected mayor corruption. And it is incredible, but it has to be recorded for the records that in the public statement that we have seen in the last 48 hours online, Lutfur Rahman is brazenly telling somebody that he did no wrong. Our campaign is saying that Lutfur must explain what he did right about Terrorist Council's duties to safeguard Shamima Begum and the other children. And we shall elaborate on this question. And there is the extended piece by Kahal Milmo on pages 36 and half of 37 called, it's published under legal, and it says the ISIS brides, victims or terrorists. And it says Shamima Begum cannot return to the UK, but dozens of other British-born women are also stranded. He says women. It's of course women after dozens, but we don't know why that error happened. And they're giving prominence to Anish Kapoor, saying that he said that Anish Kapoor is being reported as having said that Shamima Begum is being denied justice. And we are saying that Lutfur Rahman must explain why Shamima Begum was neglected by Terrorist Council for years. And here is the If anyone needed more shocking, racist stupidity from Priti Patel, then the Daily Mail is carrying it. It's saying that asylum seekers to be sent abroad, overseas. And it is, while radicalization of Shamima Begum is unacceptable, Priti Patel's radical racism is acceptable and is being celebrated by the Daily Mail on the front page in the headline. It says, radical plan for future channel migrants. There is no such thing as channel migrants. The migrants are either being denied asylum by France and any next door country, they are under international law, the migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. If the refugees are being sent abroad, then it's in breach of international legal obligations that the UK is under. No sign that there is any law at all that Priti Patel needs to observe. And it's a one-sided racist hatred campaign by the Daily Mail. The top half of the page is, of course, front page is given to attacking the European Union, which is being accused inside of having declared vaccine war on Britain. What there is the word and the concept of war. They can't find enough excuses to use the narrative and the rhetoric of war. That's what we are pointing out. Everything about the migrants is about war. Everything about the European Union is about war. And they are calling it a revolution now. Priti planned to tackle illegal channel boat crossings, but war refugees will get help. Now, this is to be seen and read in context about Boris Johnson having declared that 3 million Hong Kong people would be allowed to come in just like that. 3 million Hong Kong people would be allowed to come into Britain, but there will be war on the migrants trying to cross the channel. Think about that. And they're running this line about misogyny being a hate crime, being made a hate crime here. Again, the point is that it's no good adding to the list of existing crimes. If the crime is to be policed by the police, and the police are being accused, factually, correctly, and accurately, of having attacked the vigil, peaceful vigil for the victim of sexist abduction, possible rape and murder, Sarah Everard, which means that the accountability of the police has to be established. There is no accountability by the police for what they do, not any accountability whatsoever. Anyone watching this is our regular legal disclaimer and evidential disclaimer. Anyone watching this and noticing any statement, assertion suggestion or comment that they think is not accurate or neutral or objective, we invite and welcome anyone who thinks that to contact us by direct message, strictly on the facts, no gossip, no trolling, no debating, no inappropriate, irrelevant comment, diversions, just on the key facts. If we have got a fact wrong, or we have misstated it, or we have omitted something that is central to the fact. That is our policy. And we then go on to the Times. Which the front page has got 3 items. And the top item is asylum seekers sent abroad. What it means is that to be sent abroad under plans to deter migrants. Now, as we keep having to say that, or we keep saying this clarifier, for a very long time, inordinately long time, the Times newspaper title, which is now owned by the corrupt, dirty digger Rupert Murdoch, but it was for too long, whoever owned it, referred to as the newspaper of record. It's not. Because this item about asylum seekers sent abroad under plans to, and the 2 words I'm going to say, deter migrants, is totally stupid. Migration is not something that is indulged in by some lazy people. Or asylum is not sought by some lazy people with no grounds or with no emergency. Asylum seekers, migrants, refugee seekers, these are people among millions who are desperate to leave areas where there has been genocide, massacres, political violence, repression, rapes, and so on. So there are international conventions already in place to help such people escape and find refuge, asylum, in order to settle down and have a life. And the Times is in denial of that. The Times is describing the migrants as if these migrants are some kind of offenders. And we shall be continuing look later at all the issues and plus updates and comments, and we shall be posting comments, questions to the Bangladeshi councillors and Town Council.